The King's New Clothes. Once upon a time, there lived a king. He was very vain and very rich. The only thing he liked to do was to wear new clothes of the latest fashions. He lived in his castle and his town was always lively and merry. One fine day, two men, introducing themselves as weavers, came to the castle and requested to meet the kings. The king allowed them in and they explained that they were able to weave material. They said that these materials would be of the most beautiful colors and designs the king has never seen. Then these two weavers looked around and whispered to the king that these fabulous materials were invisible to those who were stupid and to those who were unfit for the post they held. The foolish king believed all these fibs and thought how wonderful it would be to possess this wonderful material. He was also excited by the thought that he would be able to identify which officers in his court were unfit to be in their current positions. So the king ordered a large sum of money and a vast quantity of the finest silk in the country to be given to the two men. The two men started work immediately. They hid the silk in some cellars in their houses. Then they set up their workshop with two looms and pretended, as if they were hard at work weaving the invisible material. All of the townspeople heard of this new suit of clothes being made for their king. They were all eager to know how foolish their neighbors would turn out to be, and most of all, who would turn out to be unfit to hold their office. The king, who was eager to find out how the weavers were getting on with the cloth, sent his most faithful minister to meet the two weavers. The faithful minister went to meet the two shrewd weavers who pretended to be hard at work at the looms. The minister, who could not see any kind of material, wondered what it meant. He did not want people to think that he was not suitable for office, so he pretended that he could see the material and admired the invisible designs on the fabric that were really not there. He went to the king and explained how beautifully the weavers were doing their job, and of the beautiful designs on the cloth. A few days later, the king sent some other officers to inspect the progress of his new clothes. These two officers also pretended that they could see the material, for they were afraid that they would be accused of unsuitability of office. They also returned to the king and elaborated about the material at length. The day came when the king was to be fitted with his new suit of clothes. The two rouges brought the material to the castle, and the king stood in front of the mirror, while the two weavers pretended to dress him with the new clothes. The king himself could not see the material, but he pretended that he could see it, in fear of being thought stupid. All of the king's courtiers cheered and commented on how beautiful the clothes looked. None of the king's officers could see the clothes, but they pretended to see it. Out in the streets the townspeople were lined up and waiting to see the king's new clothes. The king came out majestically in his imaginary clothes and the people cried out, "Your clothes are beautiful." Not one of them could see even a stitch on the king's body, but they did not want to admit that they could not see the clothes. However, there was a little boy in the crowd, and he had not heard about the king's new clothes. As the king and his procession came into view, he cried out, "Look at the king! The king has got no clothes on." Then several voices began calling out, "The king has no clothes on." Everyone started laughing as they realized that they had been tricked. The king and his officers were the only ones who did not laugh, and they walked on in a dignified manner until they reached the castle. The two rouges went back to their homes, collected their silk and gold and fled from the country. They lived in comfort and luxury for the rest of their days. The end. Thank you for listening to the stories at ZynKids.com.